I invited Obama.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that. I would be surprised if he accepted that invitation, but certainly. And we're live. Happy Sunday, everyone. Good morning. This is Slow News Day. My name is Steve Poikinen. I am coming to you from beautiful Boulder Creek, California, where the flannel shirt is our state flag, the pit bull is our state bird, and cannabis is our state flower. I am joined this morning by Victor Tiffany, who is a political revolutionary. Indeed, I agree with that self-described statement. Active in the nuclear freeze campaign in the 1980s, and after Citizens United versus FCEC in 2010, became active in the movement to amend the Constitution to overturn that rule and all related decisions. Took a leave of absence as senior I'm just grab the phone here. I can actually read it now. Leave of absence as the senior columnist for the Amendment Gazette to organize a large national leverage strategy on behalf of Senator Bernie Sanders. Wrote for the Syracuse Progressive Examiner until June of 2016, and while studying the illegitimate Supreme Court decisions that granted the rights of individuals to associations and established the doctrine that money spent on electioneering is protected by the First Amendment, he became aware of how far from the framers' vision the United States has become. Victor, you are also the founder of the BernieOrBust organization, and that is why you are here today to discuss both the potential and the probable outcomes of either Bernie or Bust. So welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Great, Steve. Thanks for having me. I appreciate this opportunity to explain to people how exactly Bernie or Bust is a foregone conclusion for 2020.
Yeah, and they're not letting you on, mainstream or normal outlets or anything like that.
That's right. Yeah, I've been on a few podcasts, but for some reason, people like Jimmy Dore or Kyle Kalinske and Mike Figueroa, the Humanist Report, aren't talking about Bernie or Bust yet, or even the more influential, if you will, the more dangerous Bernie or Trump voters. That's what we've discovered recently, and that's why we're trying to get out there to sound the alarm. Hey, there's no candidate can defeat Trump because of these Bernie or Trump swing voters, and that's what I want to really get at today.
Well, let's jump right into the Bernie or Trump voters. But before we do that, I would like to reiterate one more time for the folks at home that Kyle Kalinske is Tom Hartman's Padawan, and he will be telling you blue no matter who within a decade.
Yeah, he was arguing against Bernie or Bust last time in a debate, but it doesn't matter. Even if he argues, even if he denounces Bernie or Bust, he's not doing his listeners or the Democratic Party any favors by ignoring it. It's a lie of omission that he and anyone else not talking about what I'm going to present in the next few minutes are engaged in. They're lying to their audiences, and what they're doing without even realizing it is helping Donald Trump get reelected.
And in their more I guess honest moments. No, I'm not calling everyone that you listed a liar, but I do think that a lot of what they do is performative, and performative specifically for the clicks, the money, the ad revenue, what have you, which is also why they're playing it safer, in my opinion, and not talking about what is an inevitability in most sane people's minds. But they will admit that not only is there a legitimacy to the concept of Bernie or Bust, but there's an absolute need for it because it is just Bernie Sanders at this moment who beats Donald Trump.
It is, and it's interesting what we've discovered. We've known about the Bernie or Trump voters for quite some time, but it's in the last couple of months we got looking at the polling results of about 4,200 plus burners in 2017, looking at how they voted in the general election. 78% of them voted for Hillary Clinton, 12% voted for Trump, 8% of us were Bernie or busters. We voted for Jill Stein, and 2% stayed home, probably thinking they're Bernie or bust because the corporate media kept saying over and over again, oh, they're advocating for people to stay home, which was never the case. And before I elaborate on this whole thing, there might be people watching or listening who need a visual representation of what I'm describing. So the Revolt Against Plutocracy YouTube channel, most recent video is Bernie or Bust is a foregone conclusion. And you can see the polls that I'm actually referring to. If it helps somebody listening to visualize what I'm talking about, you can go listen to that 17-minute video and it'll basically say the same thing I'm saying now.
I'll make sure I put a link to that channel in the description when I go through.
You can. I'll get that to you. What we realized that this poll showed was that the Bernie or Trumpers, the swing voters, the people who said, all right, I'm not voting blue, I'm voting for Trump. I think they're locked inside this two-party mental prison, so they didn't think about voting third party. They've never probably been to our website. There is no Bernie or Trump website. These are completely unorganized, spontaneous people shifting. We can talk about these people more later on. But the point is, they could have claimed responsibility for Hillary Clinton's defeat. There was enough of them who voted for Trump in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania to have claimed credit if they were organized enough to do so. But they're not, and they didn't, and we couldn't, because in Pennsylvania, the write-in votes, which were counted in Pennsylvania, plus the increased number of votes Jill Stein got between 2012 and 2016 was not enough to account for the margin of victory for Trump. She would have lost without Bernie or Bust. But the Bernie or Trumpers is a different story. So people might be thinking, so what? That was 2016. You know, what about now? Those people surely have changed their mind after 3 years of Donald Trump's ridiculous presidency, right? Wrong. There was a Washington Examiner, which is a right-wing paper, claiming that these Bernie or Trump voters are Bernie or busters. They're not, and they won't correct that headline. But there's a poll done by Emerson College in April showing that 26% of Bernie supporters planning on voting for him in the primary will vote for Trump versus Elizabeth Warren in the general election. This is still happening.
Oh, yeah.
And then a poll that came out this last week, and you're going to love this because you talk about manufacturing confusion. This is published by Business Insider. In fact, it's their poll. And the headline, the headline is 2/3 of Bernie Sanders supporters would also vote Elizabeth Warren if she's the nominee. That means 1/3 won't.
Yeah.
And 12% was enough last time. So they're completely hiding and burying the headline. The news of that story is 1/3 of Bernie supporters will not vote for Elizabeth Warren in the general election. Now, as I make clear in the Revolt Against Plutocracy video, those percentages are not an increased number of people who are basically Bernie or Bust and Bernie or Trump. Bernie's starting with a smaller percentage. You do look at the polling, he's getting what, around 20%, sometimes 15%. So we're talking about a smaller number to begin with, but the same number of people who are Bernie or Trump. So it looks like a higher percentage. The higher percentage is misleading. And we make this clear in our video because we're not interested in propaganda. We're interested in facts. And the fact is that those numbers indicate that the same thing that was in place in 2016 remains in place for 2020. And so if you're a Democrat and you want the candidate who can defeat Trump, there's only one. And the reason for that is not the Bernie or Busters. There's fewer of us than there are of them. Although there's more of us coming along this time than there was last time. I'll talk about the Bernie or Bust generation if you want. But there's more Bernie or Trump voters. So instead of the bluster like we exerted in 2016, because we didn't know. Somebody claimed in 2016 that Bernie or Bust was a prediction. I was unsure of that until it became a fact. Even the morning of the election, I was not expecting or Bust to follow through to actually happen. This time, we have the polls from 2016 2016 to look at. We have current polls to look at. We know. I mean, as I said in the video, I'll bet a year's pay. If Bernie Sanders is not the Democratic Party nominee, Donald Trump will be reelected under current economic conditions, and that's important. So let me quickly touch on that. Since World War II, 10 presidents have run for re-election. 7 of them have won re-election. The 3 who did not have good employment numbers. If an incumbent president has good, low unemployment numbers, like the current unemployment numbers, even though some people have 2 or 3 part-time jobs and they're working too much, they'd rather have a single job with sufficient pay, they're still good economic numbers, historically speaking.
Yeah.
So the idea that anybody can defeat Trump is a complete myth. And when you take into consideration these numbers of Berners who are saying, I'm not voting for, even Elizabeth Warren, who's as close as anybody to Bernie policy-wise, or at least she says she is.
Yeah, I think that's up for debate.
Well, yeah, we're very clear about that. In fact, anybody who wants more information on that should subscribe to BernieOrBust television. We have that going on. It's basically a daily show describing various things. It might be talking about Obama denouncing the woke, or Elizabeth Warren's funding of Medicare for all. I mean, Alan Howe discusses a whole wide variety. He's got to discuss a lot of different topics when you do a daily show. And it's well worth watching that daily if you can. But yeah, no, she's not a progressive. She's never defined herself as a progressive, and that should be an alarm for any progressive who wants a progressive president. So just because the BernieOrBusters and the Bernie are Trumpers together, there is no way that any other candidate can defeat Trump. But there's another element of this. How is it that Bernie can defeat Trump? After all, he's a socialist, right? And isn't that too far, too extreme, even though his policies are popular coming in, every one of them at over 50% approval? So the answer has to do with a study that was published in 2018. Again, information that we didn't have available in 2016, or we would have had a whole different approach toward BernieOrBust back then. But now we know why Bernie can defeat Trump, because he has a wider, broader potential winning coalition than any other Democrat can bring to the table. So what am I talking about? Piketty, Thomas Piketty, a French political economist, studied 70 years of voter behavior in France, England, and the United States. And he published a paper in 2018 that showed poor people and poorly educated people won't vote at all unless there is a social democrat on the ballot, someone like Bernie Sanders. Social democrat is the European term for democratic socialist, right? So there's millions of people. Again, when we say BernieOrBust is the least of the Democratic candidates' problems, the millions of people who won't vote at all are another big problem for any Democrat besides Bernie Sanders.
164 million.
They're not coming out for another neoliberal. Just like millions of Democrats last time stayed home because they didn't want to vote for a neoliberal like Secretary Clinton, and they didn't want to vote for Donald Trump, for a neo-fascist like Trump. So they stayed home and didn't vote at all. That's similar to what we call Piketty poor. So we're talking millions of people, and I can't just talk about the Piketty poor without also mentioning why Bernie Sanders is equipped to mobilize these non-voters. Bernie Sanders is the only candidate who has an army of 1 million volunteers working for him now, making phone calls, going door to door, canvassing, and he's got his own data, a voter database, right? His own voter database this time.
Yeah.
Instead of using the DNC's database.
Well, that was part of the problem last year too. They've been after Bernie's email list since early on in 2016, and that we discussed this I think with Elizabeth Voss. But the hack or the breach into the DNC voter access network, that only ended up benefiting Hillary Clinton.
It benefited BernieOrBust too. We had the biggest rush of traffic to our website during that shutdown of that database A lot of people took the Bernie or Bust pledge during those 2 or 3 days. So it backfired on Clinton is what happened. So just to finish this point, he's got his own database this time, which he's learned, like us, he's learned he's learned to avoid mistakes. But somebody, a programmer, has developed burnout. So instead of just having that might very potentially obsolete database, he's got these canvassers going door to door, finding these people, finding out who's registered, who's not registered, encouraging them to register based on Bernie's agenda of higher minimum wage, a livable wage, which poor people need, free medical care, which poor people need, and free college education, which poorly educated people need. Bernie is their candidate, and he's got an army of volunteers finding these people, getting them registered. I'm sure they'll get a phone call the day of the election or primary. Hey, don't forget it's primary day to get out and vote. Standard GOTV activities. But no other candidate has this. So, and no other candidate is going to mobilize the peakedy poor. So when you talk about only Bernie beats Trump, it's not just because Bernie has this innate leverage of the Bernie or Trumpers and the constructed, organized leverage of Bernie or Busters. He's also got millions of poor people who will not vote for Elizabeth Warren or Joe Biden or anyone else. He's got the broadest coalition of the peakedy poor, the Bernie or Trumpers, the Bernie or Busters, and the, if they're true to their word, blue no matter who, right? They should vote for Bernie. He's going to be running on the Democratic Party ballot. And that leaves the people, I think, the citizens that people like Barack Obama are worried about. The swing voters.
Real quick, Victor, let me clear something. Let me clear something up real quick.
Who will have to choose between Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, which seems to me to be a no-brainer. But then again, I'm a progressive.
Well, look. I wanna clarify something here real quick. And it's about the Bernie or Trumpers. Now, these are people who themselves only see a two-party solution and not you personally, or how does that all put together?
Well,
are you discussing it from like an archaeological
interviews.
perspective? Like, okay, I'm looking at this group of people and describing this group of people, or are you in fact agreeing with it, you either vote for Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump, and you're not a third party, you're not a fucking let's just organize and surround the houses of power until we get our goddamn agency back?
Bernie or Bust is on November 3rd. It's very simple. On November 3rd, 2020, people who took the Bernie or Bust pledge officially will vote progressive. Whether that's Bernie Sanders as a Democrat, will accept Tulsi Gabbard, she's close enough, or we'll vote third party, either Green Party or Socialist Party. And that decision will be made after the DNC, whether we'll put our money and efforts into helping the Green Party candidate or the Socialist Party candidate. And everyone will get to vote on that. All the people who are still Bernie or Bust. The Bernie or Trumpers, I think I alluded that they are, like most Americans, trapped inside the two-party mental prison for whatever reason, right? And the media plays no small part in that. They're the ones who are covering the horse race as a two-party competition. So they ignore the third-party candidates for the most part. And why they don't walk out, I mean, I can't, I'm not inside their mind. We don't support Bernie or Trump. We would love to recruit them into Bernie or Bust, but we don't have the multi-million-dollar advertising budget to reach out to them. So I don't know how to go about in any systematic or even haphazard manner to reach out to them and try to convince them to vote progressive, which is just as effective of a leverage strategy as Bernie or Bust is, voting third party. But for our purposes this time around, it's moot. Our point now is not, we wish these guys would be Bernie or Bust. Our point is look out for those people. They're going to destroy the Democratic Party's chances of defeating Trump. Those Bernie or Trumpers, for whatever reason that they won't vote blue unless it's Bernie, is for us moot. I mean, I would love to know. I wouldn't mind doing some interviews with some of them to find out. But why is not important to us and to Democrats as the fact that they are Bernie or Trump. And there's a lot of them, millions of them. And they're still here. So there's just no other way another candidate can defeat Trump under current economic conditions with low unemployment the way it is.
That's a point that I've made too. I've said for quite over a year now that barring a financial collapse, if when they rig the convention again, Donald Trump wins. And the only way I can see a neoliberal beating Donald Trump is through both a rigged convention and an economic crash. And it doesn't seem like, it seems like the people who manage the economy, who manipulate the markets, would hold off on the looting a little bit and let that election play out, let Donald Trump win.
So what I've been thinking of is there's an article that was circulating quite a bit in social media yesterday from 2018 of Bill Clinton advising Tom Perez. I don't know if you happen to catch this. It's on a lot of the Bernie or Bust Facebook groups. Bill Clinton advising Tom Perez in 2018 to not let the Berners get power within the Democratic Party. So in other words, people like Bill Clinton are willing to sacrifice the only candidate who can possibly defeat Donald Trump in the name of protecting power. People like Bill Clinton would rather have Trump than Bernie Sanders. And that's true with a lot of the, let's call them the Biden or busters, right? The plutocrats who fund the Democratic Party, the people Obama was talking to recently when he claimed that American people don't want change, the kind of change represented by either Warren or Bernie Sanders. So yeah, they're willing to. So here's my theory, or speculation, I should say, build on what you just said, that they will rig the system for a neoliberal, and these Wall Street plutocrats, these bankers, have enough ability to screw with the system as a whole to cause themselves a good stock market crash and force unemployment on people, specifically for the purposes of getting somebody like Buttigieg or Biden or Patrick elected to the White House, because they just don't like, even Trump doesn't go along with the full neoliberal agenda as much as someone like Buttigieg would. So I don't know if they have that ability, but I wouldn't be surprised if they attempted to crash the market for these purposes, possibly in the aftermath of the DNC, but not necessarily.
Well, I mean,
the timing's got to be such that there's got to be enough time for corporations to start laying people off, and to have that show up in quarterly GDP reports and unemployment reports, which are monthly. So sometime, I wouldn't be surprised if sometime next summer there is an intentional crash of the market. Not a market crash, but an intentional behind-the-scenes Wall Street manipulation of the stock market in order to crash it and help the neoliberal defeat Donald Trump. That would not surprise me any more than wagging the dog, right? Trump going to war with Iran just because Americans tend to vote for their president when at war. Same, both are equal possibilities as far as I'm concerned.
And I'm glad that you mentioned Pete Buttigieg. CIA Pete, to me, is just a lab-created Langley Democrat whose career bears that out. You don't go from Harvard to McKinsey, then to the Naval Intelligence Unit that he's in, and become mayor of a small, a small college town because you finally just got into politics. You're still carrying out a mission at that point, and he seems like a storybook rise to success through the Democratic ladder. He's, people were going as far as to call him a white Obama after it didn't work when they tried calling Beto a white Obama. And there's really not too many people that you can throw that descriptor at in desperation to try and get people to latch onto your bullshit candidate, but they're going to try. That last debate was a showcase for the inevitability of a Warren and Buttigieg ticket, in my opinion. That inevitability coming, of course, out of a rigged convention. And I agree with you that Bernie Sanders has the numbers and the voters and the platform and the wherewithal to become the general election nominee. What I am cynically aware of is how blatantly rigged this election, this primary is being, even more so than 2016, even more so than 2018, where they were just backing up an enterprise rental truck and hucking ballots in the back of it down in down in Broward County.
Right.
Which is where the bust part of your strategy or your organization comes in. And we can come back to Bernie's ground game, his effectiveness as a campaigner, but I would really, really like to know what the bust part of BernieOrBust looks like in terms of organization or discussion, and what may come from that bit.
Well, we're leaving it vague right now, intentionally. We didn't want to dictate the meaning of or bust. It's not about staying home, right? It's about voting. We are revolutionaries. We are peaceful revolutionaries, which means voting, even if it's useless. And I mean that because of the way that the systems can be hacked, the way that certain files can be penetrated, the GEMS files can be manipulated into fractional voting, and the outcomes can be shaped into whatever the hackers decide to make the outcome. Nevertheless, it's still, our approach is revolutionary, peaceful revolution through the ballot box. And we're not against street actions. In fact, we want Extinction Rebellion to be making all kinds of noise, and the Sunrise Movement to be making all kinds of noise, because that will shift the Overton window into Bernie's direction. So we encourage street protests and rebellions and shutting down highways and bridges and things like that, and raise the alarm around climate change. Because Bernie's the only candidate with a platform, and even his Green New Deal doesn't go far enough. But to address your question, we're going to vote third party. We're going to vote progressive. If Bernie's not the nominee, we're going to vote, and we're going to vote for a progressive, probably Green Party, just because they are the largest progressive third party in the country. And we made the decision, a handful of us last time, to swing or bust away from the write-in when we realized what a stupid mistake it was to advocate a write-in candidacy for a candidate who's not running as a write-in candidate. Most states don't even bother counting. So if you're going to have a national strategy, you want something that can be evaluated in the aftermath of the or bust scenario. So it's probably going to be Green Party. It might be Socialist Party, but we will send out an email. We will set up a poll on our website and send out an email to everybody who's Bernie or Bust, still subscribed on our list, which is over 50,000 now. And they will decide where we will spend our PAC money, who we will advocate for, whether it's the Green Party candidate or the Socialist Party candidate, or for all I know, the Justice Party might run somebody that. I'm
gonna tell you something now that you may not know. I know that some of the audience does, because I had Ian Schlackman on and we talked about it. But thanks to DNC-esque shenanigans within the Green Party, Howie Hawkins is not only the presumptive Green Party nominee, but also the Socialist Party nominee.
No, I didn't know that. I did know the shenanigans in the Green Party.
Yeah, Howie Hawkins dual nominated by the Socialist Party and the Green Party.
It's really strange to have a party basically take 5 candidates off the potential of running. I did listen to part of that interview, And it was pretty shocking to hear that coming from the Green Party. So,
well, and coming from Ian, who is just a doe-eyed, adorable man who, like, you know, there's not an ounce of animus in the guy. He for what he for him to get to the point to where he needed to talk about it was a lot, you know. And then just yesterday, I mean, he hasn't stopped doing anything that he would already doing. He was at an action yesterday to raise awareness around Johns Hopkins University trying to buy out a housing project and displace like 600 low-income residents so they could build dorms. Like, Ian's, you know, doing the work that the Green Party should be raising national attention and awareness of, but they're trying to decide whether or not to include Jesse Ventura into their presidential nominating process, and Jesse Ventura isn't a Green.
No, he isn't.
Any way, shape, or form. They have this thing with celebrity, because if they can get the celebrity, maybe they can reach that 5% threshold, but nobody knows better than the Green Party how easily dismissed or discounted votes for that party are on the federal level. It's really frustrating to work through.
Yeah, it's really hard to believe actually that Joe Stein only got just barely over 1% of the vote, given the choice that voters were offered by the two major parties. I read once, I haven't confirmed this, that 1.7 million voters left the presidential line on the ballot blank in 2016. I don't know what the Democrats were thinking, and I'm talking about both the superdelegates who could have decided to win by dropping Hillary Clinton, the most controversial, heavy baggaged candidate and unpopular candidate of the 20th century, or since World War II.
Since they've been keeping track of since they had a statistic for it. Most unpopular Democrat in the history of Democrats running for president since they created the stat.
Versus the most popular in office, other than perhaps Obama, but the most popular member of Congress in the country, right? So they had a choice between someone unpopular and someone popular, and they chose. We said it in Philadelphia as soon as they nominated Hillary Clinton, we went in, we got into the convention. We didn't go into the main building, but we went into the media tent and held a press conference to announce the fact that they just elected Donald Trump. And it didn't matter. They weren't going to change anything. We told them, we had a press conference before they voted, the very first day of the convention in Philadelphia, letting them know there's no way Hillary Clinton was going to beat Donald Trump. We did the rally. We did a billboard. And some of the billboard, I have to say, back then was bluster. We didn't have confidence like we do this time. We didn't have polling from another election to look at. We didn't have polling that confirmed those kind of numbers like we do this time. So there was a little bluster behind our billboard that said nominate Sanders or lose in November. I'll be honest about that. I honestly didn't think, on the day of the election, I didn't think that was going to happen, but it did. So they chose to lose, whether they are willing to admit it or not. You go with a candidate as corrupt and unpopular and untrusted as someone like Hillary Clinton, and you're going to lose. And now it's not even that, because Buttigieg probably isn't as corrupt as she is, and probably.
I would say that he's an acolyte, and the only reason he's less corrupt is he hasn't had as much time in the game. But given an opportunity, he would be far worse.
Could very well be, given his background, as you laid it out. Yeah, no, they have the choice. The Democrats have to come to a realization, as we said in the Newsweek piece that we published. There's only two candidates at this point who can become the next president. Donald Trump, and he's not going to be found guilty by the Senate. There's no question about that. He's not going to be evicted from office. Or Bernie Sanders, because he's the only one who has the winning coalition, including the Bernie or Trump voters. So all this run up, the problem is, Steve, you're willing to interview me, and a few podcasters are willing to interview me and hear this out, but until Jimmy Dore comes around, or and I'll really want to call out Benjamin Dixon, right? Benjamin Dixon says, "Oh no, there's a fascist in the White House. We can't discuss Bernie or bust." So in other words, he's going to keep his listeners in the dark. Again, a lie of omission, and not let the Democrats know that their choice this time is Bernie or Trump. I mean, that's their choice. And again, it's not the Bernie or busters that are the main group or the category of voters that the Democrats need to worry about. It's the Bernie or Trump swing voters who are going to cause this damage more than us.
I'm more than us. And I can't speak for Jimmy Dore. I can't try and understand what's going on in his head or what his thought process, because I'm not the guy. If I was Jimmy, I would be putting you out there, and it may just be that he's biding some time and waiting to see how the first couple of primaries play out. And if it's one of those things where 5 out of 5 coins go Elizabeth Warren's way, then yeah, I would imagine that your inbox would start loading up with people wanting to talk to you. I'm interested in getting people as informed and as prepared as I can with, the resources that I have and the people that talk to me. And this is an important part of it, because we can't think critically about presidential elections in this country without remembering how openly and brazenly rigged they've become. And that's why the bust, to me, even though I'm an ass man, is more, more focal in terms of what you're doing, because I really do think there has to be an organizational plan of action in place months before the convention. And I think the only way that you can pressure these oligarchs, plutocrats, lizard people, demon spawn, whatever you want to call them, the only way that you can pressure them enough is to let them know up front, way ahead of time, that not only is it Bernie or bust, it's also the Bernie or Trump people, and the 164 million non-voters in the last presidential election that are ready to pull the plug on your stupid fix game. So a national organizing strategy for that, I think has got to be a focal point, at least starting in March of next year.
Well, actually, it goes right back to what you were just talking about, when someone like Jimmy Dore might go ahead and interview me and get this information out. He doesn't even have to interview me. He can interview Ellen Howell, the host of Bernie or Bust Television, or he can just talk about this. He can watch the video, understand exactly what it is we're talking about, and convey this himself. He hasn't talked about Bernie or Bust yet. And in 2016, he was on the Bernie or Bust side of the argument. He debated Sam Cedar.
Oh yeah, that garbage.
About the Majority Report host, and Cedar was against it, and Dore was for it. For Bernie or bust. He made the case for Bernie or bust. And now he won't talk about it. So you're right about the need to get this information in people's ears. We care less about the plutocrats and the funders than we care about the rank and file. Those are the people being disserved by the progressive media, by Benjamin Dixon, by, at this point, Jimmy Dore. I'm taking it to Dixon because he just refuses to have me on. Dore hasn't said one way or another. He hasn't said no. He hasn't said yes. I mean, I send him, I have his email address. I send him, like the recent video on the Revolt Against Plutocracy channel, describing what I began this interview explaining just last night. And it's not the first time I've reached out to him. But the point is, if he doesn't get this information into the hands, into the ears and minds of Democrats, not just progressives, it's up to the progressives who are listening perhaps to this interview to get this shared, to get this information shared and in the hands of rank and file suburban Democrats who can't stand Donald Trump, and they really want to nominate somebody who can defeat Donald Trump. So one of this article, the Business Insider, with that crazy headline, had more information about Democrats who think Bernie can defeat Trump versus those who don't think he can defeat Trump. And right now, there's more Democrats who don't think he can defeat Trump than those who think he can. And the reason for that, again, is nobody's talking. You don't hear CNN talking about the peakedy poor. You don't hear MSDNC talking about the peakedy poor. Crystal Ball on the Hill, the Rising Show, has talked about the peakedy poor. We've been tweeting her, letting her know about this, these people. But, that's not enough. She's probably preaching to the choir, same as you and I are preaching to the choir. And people listening to this might already know, well, I'm voting for Bernie, and if it's not Bernie, I'll vote Green, or I'll stay home, or I'll vote Trump, or whatever their thinking is. We're preaching to the choir, and what we need to do is get it to a larger audience before February 3rd, or whenever the first caucuses are, before those coin flips. There are no coin flips.
You managed to get an article into Newsweek.
Bernie needs 50% going into the DNC, or else the Democrats will lose, because the superdelegates are not going to let Bernie Sanders get close to the nomination. They're not going to do that. It's in that regard, it's rigged. It's also rigged. I see people tweeting, if they rig this system again, if they rig the primaries again, I'm Bernie or bust. They are.
Yeah.
It's rigged by the fact that Bernie has to have, or any candidate has to have 50%.
It's 51%, isn't it? Or 50.1. It has to be a little bit more.
These candidates to make sure he doesn't get 50%. It's rigged by the media Bernie blackout. And it's rigged by even someone like Jimmy Dore, for whatever reason, not covering this in time so that his audience can get the word out to other Democrats, and then they can get the word out to other Democrats, and word of mouth spread, because social media only goes so far. This has to trickle out and about through the ecosystem, the political ecosystem throughout the country, in red states and blue states and flyover states and coastal states, before these primaries and caucuses begin, or else it will be too late. Because, again, the system is rigged with this 50% rule and all the other things that the corporate media is doing to undermine Sanders.
I believe it's like 50.1 or 51%. There's got to be a little bit more, and that, of course, is the entire reason that the DNC has fielded 439 candidates. And a lot of them are from, New York and California. I do think that the DNC's strategy to move the California primary up has backfired, and that we're going to see disappearing ballots on a scale that will make 2016 look like small potatoes. And the most conservative estimates in 2016 are that 2 million ballots went missing in California or weren't processed in California. I have heard upwards of 6 to 7 million in the process. And we've got something that I need to follow up on with an internet magic person, in that the Clinton campaign was posting locations for polling places that on the Clinton website, Hillary for Victory website, that did in fact not exist as advertised regular polling stations, which is an entire different level of rigging that that blew my mind when I heard it, and I fully intend on following up on it. I would not put it past anyone in the DNC to do that. The threshold that you've got to get 15% in a state to win a delegate, earn a delegate. Sanders will obviously, at least obvious to me, will take a minimum of 15% in every state. It's how they do the delegate trading beforehand and up front on the first round that ultimately makes the difference. Because going into that second round, that's when the super delegates get to step in.
Right.
And
Yeah,
people act like they don't trade delegates. If you go to, I think it's fucking Wikipedia, but if you type in like delegate swap, there's stuff going back to the 19 teens on how this is a regular practice, it's normal, it's expected, it's part of the game. And there are people walking around in 2019 pretending like that doesn't happen. Pretending like, as you've been talking about, pretending like there's not a need to discuss a rigged primary, an organization like BernieOrBust, something like Revolt Against Plutocracy, in fact. And as far as Jimmy's concerned, he's firmly in Tulsi Gabbard's camp. That's who he's advertising for at the moment. I know that on a personal level, he has some of the same problems with Bernie Sanders that I do, and that when he had the opportunity to take a stand for all the people that voted for him, he folded like wet cardboard and said go and vote for Hillary Clinton. Yeah, these conversations are going to become inevitable. We're getting to it relatively early, but that's what happens on this show. You get news breaking before it actually happens. You get to have the conversation before it becomes a part of more mainstream discourse. Because that's just what we do. We're talking about stuff that nobody talks about here every single time that I go on. Sorry, I got off track there for a moment.
Well, you mentioned at one point some of the sleazy tactics used by the Clinton campaign. I mean, that just barely scraped the surface. They were doing push polling in Nevada. That was documented. For those people who don't know what push polling is, that it's not just it's party activists. It's people who favor a particular candidate. They call a voter and make it sound like they're pollsters, right? They're just conducting a poll, but they ask the questions in such a way as to push the recipient of this poll into the direction of a particular candidate. So the Clinton campaign in Nevada was push polling Bernie supporters toward Hillary. You know about the convention, the second convention in Nevada, but there's not a lot of knowledge about a tactic that was used by the Clinton campaign right during the day of the caucuses. And I wouldn't have known about this except I was watching all of the Bernie or Bust YouTube videos last time. And one of them, it's gone now, but one of them was a precinct captain who he used to support Hillary. He wanted a woman in the White House. He found out about Bernie and then swung over to Bernie and got involved in the campaign, and they made him a precinct captain, even though he had never done it before. So the day went on, and they got their delegates, and Clinton got her delegates, and he gathered just contact information from the delegates so that he was able to, reach out to them before the first convention. And then after everyone was gone, this very helpful out-of-state Clinton supporter who was there to sort of help out, came up to the precinct captain and said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, your delegates need to fill out this form," which he didn't give too much thought of. Okay, people make mistakes. So he filled out the form with the contact information he had already collected and was able to, it was a triplicate form. He was able to keep the pink copies that he needed to give to the delegates when they showed up at the convention so that they could get in. So this is the first convention. He's at the first convention and he's sitting around talking with other Bernie precinct captains. And he tells them the story about what happened in this form in triplicate that needed to be filled out. And he reached in his pocket and pulled out this wad of pink copies, and all the Bernie precinct captains standing around in the circle with them reached into their pockets and pulled out the pink copies. That was a statewide tactic that the Clinton campaign used to try to block the Bernie delegates from getting into the first convention. All kinds of sleazy tactics the Clinton campaign used. And to this day, I do not understand why anybody who wanted Bernie Sanders to be president would vote for Hillary Clinton in the primaries. It's like hiring a house burglar to house sit for you when you go away on vacation. Why would you reward someone who absolutely demolished the candidates? It wasn't a fair fight.
Well, I mean, that candidate flew to 40 different states and did 46 events and, you know, told all of those people who watched him get fucked over that, hey, look, Donald Trump is a bigger threat than the way that we conduct elections in this country, and you need to vote for the Democratic candidate.
Yeah, we disagreed with Bernie. There's an article that we published. Patrick Walker, the co-author of our book, is a writer, and he, by the way, this makes a great holiday gift for your blue no matter who Democrat in your life. Anyway, he wrote, "We are not Sandinistas," and by that he meant we were critical. We were critical of some of Bernie Sanders' foreign policy votes. I'm certainly critical of his framing of Maduro as a vicious tyrant.
Yeah,
that's utter bullshit. We're critical of a lot of things he's done and said, including this idea that how'd he put it? Hillary Clinton is better on her worst days than Donald Trump will be on his best days. That's bullshit. Because Donald Trump on his best day sent the Trans-Pacific Partnership into the trash heap. That was really the best thing he's done. And if Hillary Clinton had been won, according to Jeff Weaver in his memoir of the 2016 election, Obama was going to try to push the Trans-Pacific Partnership through the lame duck session of Congress. And there's a lot of progressives who said it never would have passed. We had this thing beat. We had the supporters on their heels because it was such a dangerous threat to democratic order in the United States. And I just think they're vastly underestimating Obama's skills as a lame duck president. He got most of the things he got done as president done. Well, first I have to say during the first, what am I trying to say? The first
term,
2 years of his presidency, when it wasn't even that long before the Senate got brown.
Oh yeah, no, the first 2 years.
They lost the supermajority.
Yeah.
But he got most of his work done during these lame duck sessions. He was willing to wheel and deal and give Republicans a bunch of what they wanted.
He wanted to put Social Security and Medicare on the table. That was his grand bargain, was to give away privatized Social Security and Medicare.
Yeah, and it happened in lame duck session after lame duck session. I think we dodged a bullet. Literally, not literally, but we dodged a bullet with Donald Trump. We got an arrow in the back from Trump, and that's what the two parties were offering us last time: a gunshot to the chest or an arrow in the back. Who do you want to vote for? And we took the arrow in the back, and we dodged the bullet, which was the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which would have been this historically unprecedented power grab by corporations. It would have undermined so many aspects of the Constitution, the 10th Amendment, where, if it's not something that the federal government needs to deal with, then the states should handle that particular issue. The Trans-Pacific Partnership was federal, state, and local. It would have totally rendered the 10th Amendment moot. It should have been treated as a constitutional amendment, but because of the fast-track legislation that was passed, it would have been passed by the lame duck session on a straight majority vote in both houses of Congress. That would have been a disaster for this country, far worse than anything Donald Trump has done, including his two right-wing Supreme Court nominees. And very few Democrats can wrap their heads around this because they don't understand what was behind the Trans-Pacific Partnership, what it would have done, what an investor-state dispute settlement chapter, and how these private corporate tribunals function. Very few people understand that. And again, this is a polemic on neoliberalism and specifically their version of free trade. What they're calling free trade, Steve, is not your grandfather's or my grandfather's version of free trade. It's not just low tariffs. It's not just prohibition against currency manipulation by states.
No,
It is
it's
literally
ceding the ability
corporations
for,
writing the rules of their own behavior. It is corporate self-government replacing democratic self-government in state after state after state. It is a major threat to health, to the environment, to national self-determination, to national sovereignty, to all kinds of important political considerations. And really, Obama was a complete traitor. I don't want to use that word. I think he betrayed all the progressive rhetoric he used to run for election and re-election. He was a fraud. He was a bigger
right
fraud.
off the
I mean,
bat.
Trump is a con man, but Obama was a fraud.
You know, the moment he got elected, that progressive coalition that he built, that he fucking allowed to campaign, you know, campaigned and worked with, he immediately disbanded. Rahm Emanuel famously fucking told every progressive in the room to shut the fuck up. It was,
I think he called us fucking idiots.
Oh, that's right. It was instantaneous. The way that he severed ties with the progressives that got him elected, that allowed themselves to be suckered, that after, you know, realistically, in reality, from 1981 up to 2008, Bush family rule, because Bill Clinton is a blood relative and could not have achieved the presidency without allowing cocaine to be trafficked through Mena, Arkansas on his watch as governor. People were so tired of that and so desperate for something different, and the way that Obama was marketed was as this progressive savior, and he campaigned in the style of a genuine populist, and he had sweeping, you know, progressive, I guess, plans that never really came to fruition, but he had some words behind it, and people bought that shit, hook, line, and sinker. The vast majority of people in progressive or left media to this day, like, have no problems being like, yeah, I voted for Obama twice. I voted for Cynthia McKinney in 2008, and then in 2012, I again voted for Cynthia McKinney, and in 2016, I also wrote her name in. I have no intention of not doing that again this time, because I live in Santa Cruz County. We are guaranteed to go 74 to 86% blue no matter what. My vote for president means fuck all. But that doesn't mean that I can't help inform and make people aware of what's going on in their states and their lives. And I really do need to do a show on California ballot measures here coming up soon.
Oh, that reminds me. Yeah, there was a tweet out yesterday that I retweeted and got a lot of likes from regarding that whole issue of ballots being discarded in California. Since you mentioned that, I wanted to come back to it. Register Democrat. Just bite the bullet and register Democrat. It'll protect your ballot much better than these. What do they call the other ballots?
Provisionals.
Provisional ballots. Don't take that route. If you're in California and you want Bernie Sanders, just bite the bullet and become a Democrat long enough to vote for him in the primaries. Otherwise, you're going to have your provisional ballot chucked out, just like you described earlier in this conversation.
Yeah, and it wasn't even the 2 million number comes from just the provisional ballots alone. We've seen a lot more evidence that Alex Padilla oversaw the destruction of Bernie Sanders' ballots during that primary. Alex Padilla is Secretary of State here in California, if you guys don't know. He is still the Secretary of State here in California. It's like having Brenda Snipes down in Broward, but in charge of the entire state.
Right.
And zero consequences have befallen this man, as well as the majority of the state leadership here in California. I think this is the convention this weekend, another California Democratic convention. Pat the Burner, a.k.a. Peter Douche's liaison, a.k.a. Nate's liver, is there covering this. He's going to come on the show like he did last year after the convention to talk about it again. But Warren and Biden skipped it. Elizabeth Warren is scared of California. She is scared of the coalition of Sanders and Gabbard supporters here in this state.
She's scared of a lot of things. She's scared to answer questions. She is a profile in cowardice. That's the thing that really stood out to me from 2016 was
fantastic.
She wouldn't take a position. She wouldn't endorse Bernie or Clinton. You would think politically, from her supposed progressive policy position, she would have endorsed Bernie, but she wouldn't endorse either. And then when she finally did, she endorsed Hillary Clinton and became a Clinton superdelegate. So when we laid out, who's progressive this time and who's not progressive, we didn't make that choice. All the candidates running made that choice in 2016. Elizabeth Warren stood with the neoliberal and said, I endorse Hillary Clinton. I'm a superdelegate for Hillary Clinton. She aligned herself with Hillary Clinton. She's a neoliberal. All right. And again, we didn't make that decision. She did in 2016. I noticed again on when Kamala Harris was trying to get her to answer a question about whether she would join Harris, calling on Twitter to delete Trump's account. That's a pretty simple thing. That's a yes or no question. Either she, thinks his Twitter account should be deleted or not. She would answer that question. She is a profile in cowardice like I've never seen any other candidate. And how the hell is somebody so spineless going to stand up to Donald Trump and defeat him in a general election, even excluding all the Bernie or Trumpers and all the Bernie or Busters? Just a straight up contest between Warren and Trump will get Warren defeated because she doesn't have spine.
Yeah, I can't. In my darker moments, I imagine that debate, for the laughs. But oh man, it would be brutal to put her on stage with that fucking gaslighting douchebag. Like, it would be insane. And the fact that I really do think that they're going for it. Like, I understand they wanted Joe Biden out there to put some money back in the DNC's coffers because he's great for that. But I don't think that even, Tom Perez or the Clintons and the people that really manipulate and own and run the DNC had any intention of Joe Biden making it through the convention unless he's there to make sure his delegates go to the neoliberal. He is the most unserious candidate out there, and I think we're watching the man in full cognitive decline in real time every time that someone shoves a camera in his face. But I can't see the people who legitimately run the country wanting a Joe Biden in office. Granted, if you don't have your mental faculties, you're probably easier to control, but it's not like Reagan where you can tell him that you're going to go shoot a scene that day and to read the words right, right. Which is a literal thing that happened in the last couple of years of Ronald Reagan's presidency. But no, with Warren, I do like the phrase, the profile and cowardice. She's a confirmed liar. There's very little she won't lie about. I was a public school teacher for 2 years. You were a public school teacher. You taught in the public school system without a certificate as a speech therapist for one school term. That's different. what's her name? Jayapal is out there spreading that bullshit right now too. Elizabeth Warren was a humble public school teacher, and not law professor at Harvard or corporate lawyer for Dow Chemical, or and Republican till she was damn near a half century old, through the Reagan era, through George W. Bush, knowing what that meant, seeing I referred to her as a political windsock multiple times, and it's precisely what she did with Hillary Clinton in 2016. The fact that she gets so much credit for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau when she took upwards of $2 million from the securities and financial industries while she was ostensibly crafting it, even though their lobbyists were crafting it, and then completely abandon it a couple of years later. The amount of money that she made off of the industry she was ostensibly supposed to be regulating, the way that she openly manipulates her own supporters to this insane degree, to where they're defending her fake Native Americanism, they're defending her Republicanism, they're defending all of the money she's made, they're defending her inability to name 5 black people, Victor. She couldn't name 5 black people.
Well, to be fair, when I heard that question, I had to sit and think of 5 black people who were influential to me in some way. And it took me a while. I had probably a couple minutes before I came up with 5 names. And one of them, interesting enough, in sort of perverse manner, was Barack Obama. Because he was such a eye-opening fraud once I saw the way he was governing as a moderate Republican. It had influence in my life in terms of the theme song that we announced at the BernieOrBust rally in Philadelphia. We won't get fooled again, and that comes a little bit from the presidency of Barack Obama. We got fooled. I got fooled the first time. It wasn't until, of course, we didn't know Citibank was picking his cabinet for him.
Yeah, not
that
until,
came out, of course, in the WikiLeaks publication of the DNC emails, or what was it, the Podesta emails?
Podesta emails.
Anyway, it wasn't until I rationalized a lot of his bullshit right in the front end, because I thought, well, he's got to pick these Wall Street insiders so he doesn't freak out the capitalist system so much that they panic and fly away or something like that. I did a lot of rationalization until the constitutional law professor / president had an American assassinated with no due process. And when that happened, I was like, what? Wait, just try the guy in absentia. This is what Rand Paul, in one of his filibusters, advocated, that after the fact, that Anwar al-Awlaki should have been tried in absentia, at least go through the motions of due process, instead of having the president and a room full of people make the decision, yeah, this guy needs to be killed, send the drones. That's not constitutional at all. They're talking, and this is relevant for all this impeachment stuff. How many Democrats who were in Congress when Obama had al-Awlaki killed, how many of these Democrats who are still there in getting behind this impeachment even raised an eyebrow about that very, very high crime? I mean, I'm not saying Trump didn't violate campaign finance law, asking the president of Ukraine to look into Biden's son and so forth. He did. That's a violation, another violation of campaign finance law. But my God, they did nothing. I mean, even 2012 Obama,
Romney,
even Romney didn't say a damn word about it. It was a bipartisan consensus that it's perfectly okay to ignore the Constitution when, as if there's an asterisk there, it says, well, if the Americans actually join our enemies, then it's okay to go ahead and kill them. There is no asterisk. There was no due process. In violation of the Fifth and 14th Amendments, Obama had an American killed in a drone strike, but no mention by anyone in Congress of impeachment. And now, of course, these very same Democrats want to impeach Trump, which we've always been opposed to from the 2016 election forward. Not because Trump isn't a criminal, he is, and not because he shouldn't be impeached, he should, but rather because, like every other post World War II Republican, except maybe Eisenhower, he picked his vice president is impeachment and assassination insurance. Nobody wants Mike Pence to be the president, except maybe.
You know what? The Democratic leadership does. Mike Pence is someone he can
they know
work with.
McConnell's never going to allow a guilty verdict to come out of the Senate.
Oh, of course. Of course. No, their trick is, I don't see why the Republicans won't dismiss it out of hand. The only reason they wouldn't is then they would then have to open and allow into the record all of the evidence that the House collected to bring about impeachment charges in the first place. The political gamesmanship that's going on with impeachment in general, and I don't agree with it, at least the way that they're doing it, is it obfuscates from primary rigging. It takes the eye off of Julian Assange. It takes the eye off of Chelsea Manning, who is up over, I believe, $150,000 in fines now. And it becomes the focal point for the end of 2019 going into primary season. And it's a dead ender. It not only is it a real, in reality, it's going to go nowhere once it gets to the Senate, but politically, it's a dead ender.
No, it's worse than that. It's worse than a dead ender. It's going to backfire.
Yeah.
Because Trump's going to be able to say, after he's exonerated in the Senate, he's going to be able to come out and say, see, I told you it was a partisan witch hunt. And there's enough clueless swing voters, people who can't decide, who to vote for until the last few days before an election. These are the people who the most clueless Americans are the ones who decide who becomes the next president. But they're going to probably buy into this. Oh, the Democrats are just trying to overturn the last election narrative, which is BS also. But they'll buy into it. And they'll listen to what Trump is saying, and it's going to backfire. It's not just useless. It's going to backfire. It's one of the bigger problems that any Democrat running against Trump has that's bigger than Bernie or Bust. I said it before, and I need to say it again. Bernie or Bust is the least of the problems that any Democrat is going to have running against Trump. The biggest problem, of course, is the economy, right? Because historically, since World War II, incumbents have an advantage, and they are undefeated when they have good, low unemployment. And the exception to that was Reagan. His unemployment rate when he was reelected was over 8%, but when he was elected the first time, it was over 11%. So the unemployment rate was on its way down, and voters cut him some slack. That's the biggest problem even Bernie Sanders is going to have. And an important point about this, because of all the candidates, which one is running on a guaranteed federal job guarantee agenda? Bernie Sanders through the Green New Deal. So he actually does have something better to offer than low unemployment rates. He actually does have an agenda, aside from all the leverage that he has, and aside from the peakedy poor that he's bringing to the table, who need a federal job guarantee, or many of them would want a federal job guarantee. He's the only one who can actually challenge and break through that tradition of, a low unemployment rate is good for an incumbent president.
Yeah.
He can break through that, not only because of the peakedy poor, but because his agenda is populist. What Obama calls extremist and what's his other phrase?
We can pull that up now too, because we got about 15 minutes left here for this segment, and then I'm gonna have to get to news, and you're gonna have to do some chores according to to you. But yeah, this is the article that caused I guess Peter Dow to create the too far left hashtag. Peter Dow, by the way, if you guys, I think that he is a straight up grifter, and his whole woke up is to sell books and get himself a seat in Congress. But there are people that take him seriously, and there are people that think that he has had a political awakening and is on the right track. But this
it's possible. You'll grant that it is possible that he's woke.
That a lifelong political operative suddenly saw the... I don't know, man. Again, I'm a cynic.
I didn't say probable,
but
I said it's possible.
It's,
there's people, come on, there's people who were lifelong racists who, late, in their 50s and 60s, have an awakening and realize how stupid and immoral they've been and actually change their lives. It's possible that Peter Dow is actually progressive now.
Time will tell, and I think relatively shortly. But this article got people up in arms, and you wanted us to discuss it, and I'm for that, because I really don't do a lot of. I don't think we talk about just how terrible of a human being Barack Obama is enough on this show. And we've done some of that today, and I've enjoyed it, because for so long the slightest criticism of Barack Obama was considered a hate crime.
Or racist.
Yeah.
Racism.
Yeah,
right.
you can't lightly criticize this president without being labeled a racist. And I think that's what allowed so many people to justify his behavior, was that fear of being labeled for making an honest criticism, and it cranked up the excuse factory. But yeah, let's go through this a little bit. And let me see if I can't make this a little bit.
In that first quote of his, I actually agreed with them that it's not going to be harmful to the Democrats to have a robust primary, right? Heated, robust primary like he and Hillary Clinton had. That part of it I agreed with.
Oh, certainly, yeah. Several hundred donors and organizational leaders in Washington. Nice. I'm confident that at the end of the process we will have a candidate that has been tested. That sentence means nothing, Victor. That means absolutely nothing. In terms of how the DNC organizes their robust primaries, it is neoliberal versus neoliberal, which is what Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton's primary was. And it was a primary based on the fake populism that got Obama elected versus the steady status quo technocracy that Hillary Clinton kind of preaches. And those are the parameters of that robust primary. What Obama doesn't want is someone like Tulsi Gabbard up on stage dropping occasional truth bombs about the national security state. They don't want her to say Julian Assange's name on stage. They certainly... They
don't want her attacking people like Harris and Warren either.
Yeah, no, which is so easy.
She was cut off by the CNN moderator as soon as she started to address Elizabeth Warren. She got cut off and wasn't allowed to go back to it.
Yeah.
So one thing Obama could have said here is that, and he certainly wasn't going to, Bernie Sanders has been tested. He's been doing this for a long time. He's already run one national campaign, so he is not being obviously forthright and fully honest.
And this is the money shot of this article, while Mr. Obama did not single out any specific primary candidate or policy proposal, he cautioned that the universe of voters that could support a Democratic candidate, Democrats, Independents, and moderate Republicans, are not driven by the same views reflected on, quote, certain left-leaning Twitter feeds or the activist wing of our party. Even as we push the envelope and we are bold in our vision, we also have to be rooted in reality. The average American doesn't think that we have to completely tear down the system and remake it, and that is bullshit.
Well, first of all, nobody's advocating that. The closest anyone comes would be Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All, which would be as transformative of Obamacare as Obamacare was to the system before Obamacare. So he's sort of being disingenuous with that. Maybe not even sort of. The rest of the stuff, I mean, Green New Deal, most people already agree with that. I don't know where he's getting his stuff from. Bernie's agenda is populist. It's almost like Bernie looked at the polls and then came up with his agenda. Right? Who's Obama talking about? Moderate Republicans? I don't think we need moderate Republicans. Bernie doesn't need moderate Republicans. You know what Republicans Bernie's going to get? People in Vermont who know him, trust him, have been voting for him for years, Republicans. They will vote for Bernie Sanders. And very likely a number of, if the choice is between Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, there are moderate Republicans who will consider Bernie to be a lesser of two evils. I mean, evil is in the eye of the beholder, if I can crudely summarize an entire book by Friedrich Nietzsche.
Yeah.
So for these moderate Republicans, some of them will say Trump is the lesser of two evils because of socialism, and some of them will say Bernie's the lesser of two evils because of fascism. So, that their toss-up, and that's true for the independents too. Most independents want Bernie Sanders. That's why he's winning in the polls right now. That's why the Bernie beats Trump hashtag exists, because independents support Bernie Sanders over Donald Trump. But they also support human survival, which isn't going to happen without a Green New Deal and carbon capture. And we have to figure out how to cool the planet off while those two things take effect. Right? So the Green New Deal, which might be something that the radical remake that Obama's referring to, isn't some sort of lovely option that we would like to have. If we don't have a Green New Deal and carbon capture and some form of safe geoengineering to cool the planet off while these other two things slowly work their magic, we're facing human extinction. President Obama, we're facing human extinction. And this is going to be very clear. If somehow, by magic, Sanders is the Democratic Party nominee, and even really before the nomination, even now, we could easily replace Bernie or Bust with Burn or Burn, because that's the reality. That's the climate change reality we are facing today. So again, Obama, I don't know what Obama's trying to do. I guess he supports the BURN version of that decision. If he thinks independents would prefer Burn over BERN. A little confusing.
No. I'm right there with you. I am. Barack Obama went into office worth like $4 million. He left office worth $40 million. He just bought a $15 million house off Martha's Vineyard. For anyone to act like this man understands the minds of regular people or understands the needs of regular people is selling themselves something. He's saying what he believes to be true because it's true in the bubble that he lives in.
Yeah.
And that's why it comes out so smug and condescending and makes you want to like shake a guy. I don't think that geoengineering is the solution to a planet that's been exposed to 100 plus years of geoengineering. But I don't necessarily think that green capitalism is the solution to globalist capitalism or white nationalist capitalism or any other kind of capitalism.
Maybe
Um,
sometime I can come back and we can discuss climate change and climate preservation. That would be an interesting, long
I
conversation.
would love that. I would. I've found myself heavily influenced by the work of Cory Morningstar out of the Art of Annihilation. And because the research bears it out that there are Eastern European oligarchs and the nonprofit industrial complex that is funding the majority of Extinction Rebellion, Sunrise Movement, and whatnot, and that we've got people thinking that parades are protests, and that the solution to our problems is to shift the pockets or shift the money into different pockets of different, to a degree, oligarchs. And I'm all with, if Barack Obama is inadvertently advocating burn with a U, like, I find myself in a rare position where I agree with that man, because I don't think that you can put anyone, regardless of how good they are, into a system that was designed by sociopaths to be broken on purpose and come out with anything other than legislation that is broken on purpose, written by sociopaths. I don't think we can vote our way out of an oligarchy. It's not designed that way, nor, now that I'm more aware of how legislation gets created, I do not think we can legislate our way out of an oligarchy. I think that Bernie Sanders would have been the absolute perfect president in 1992, as we were coming out of the Cold War. But here, nearly 30 years later, tinkering around the edges of capitalism and making it slightly more comfortable to greet extinction is not what we need. Having said that, I do agree with the vast majority of what you said in a logical sense, and I've certainly long said that only Bernie Sanders beats Donald Trump. What that looks like is the saving of the Democratic Party, regardless of how that party legislates.
That's right. But the problem is we're out of time. I don't mean in our conversation, but I mean in terms of climate change. The IPCC report of 2018 makes it clear that we've got then in 2018, 12 years, that none of their data ever talked about the positive warming feedback loops. So we probably have less than 12 years. We're on the cusp of a runaway global warming we'll never recover from. There won't be enough geoengineering and carbon capture and energy transformation to save this planet if it's not done lickety split. So there's not time to build, as much as you and I think would agree, the necessity for whether it's a Green Party or Socialist Party, there's not time to build the movement and voter database and transformation that is going to be necessary. Maybe 2024, maybe 2028, but we need someone in the White House, even if it's the half measures that you just elucidated, even if it's just that, even if it's just Bernie Sanders, as much as he could do with executive orders and so forth, would be far better and get us in at least the right direction than anyone else out there. And then, he's going to need Green Party members of Congress to back him. And we still need a revolution. I would advocate peaceful revolution, because I don't want the Secret Service knocking on my door. But
oh, of course, yeah, no. And by the way, to the NSA agent tasked with listening to the show today, I'm not advocating open violence. I hope you're having a good day, Kevin, or whatever your name is. I do.
So I do. Our approach, and I'm not saying peaceful revolution has to come exclusively through the ballot box, because I think you're right. We're not going to legislate our way out of this, but eventually it's going to have to become part of it, and it's a matter of just basically countering some of other remarks made by Obama recently, The people who are woke need to get over that real quick. Just the opposite is true. People who are not woke need to wake up real damn quick to climate change, to oligarchy, to a whole wide range to neoliberalism. Most people don't know what neoliberalism is, and it's weird. It's like living in the Soviet Union and not knowing what communism is. How is that even possible? And the reason is because, as you put it, there is manufactured confusion. The corporate media is not telling people what the ideology of the ruling elites is. So we have people who don't know what the hell neoliberalism is and how neoliberal capitalism, what some people call late stage capitalism, differs from the capitalism, let's call it pre-World War II capitalism. Most people don't realize we have an empire, right? We call Puerto Rico a territory. Yeah. It's a colony. Guam is a colony. We are an empire. We have been an empire. We used to have the Philippines used to be a colony. Oh my God, were we ever vicious there? Just absolutely as vicious as anything that the Soviet Union ever did in occupied territory.
We were as brutal to the Filipinos as we were to our own Native Americans when we were stealing territory in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. Most people are not aware of just how brutal that occupation was. What we tried to do, what we did to repress that legitimate nationalist rebellion that was rejecting the latest colonial power to come along and occupy their country. It's really sick. We have a lot of healing to do, a lot of reconciliation to do in this country, and I think Bernie Sanders is the best bet to get us in that direction, at least in 2020. 2024, we can talk about maybe a challenge from a third party, a legitimate challenge. But again, they're up against this whole rigged media system, which is slowly being undermined by people like you and social media and people like Jimmy Dore. I mean, as much as I'm critical of him for not covering Bernie or Bust, he is performing a good service in terms of waking people up to the corruption of the system and the utter horror of neoliberal policies. So,
absolutely,
this is in the process of slow transformation, and it will be some point down the road when we can, if Bernie doesn't salvage the Democratic Party and make it a party of labor, then our job as Bernie or Busters is to escort that party to the dustbin of history.
That sounds like a great place to wrap up for this, Victor. I want to thank you very much for coming on today. I appreciated the discussion, and please let the folks at home know where they can find you and how they can, should they choose to, become a part of Bernie or Bust.
Sure. Well, on Twitter, we are at BernieOrBust. That's where the whole slogan was initiated. On Facebook, we are Revolt Against Plutocracy page. We have a page and we have a discussion group, but the page is the best way to get a hold of me. And otherwise, I guess that's about it. Those are the two.
And there's a Revolt Against Plutocracy YouTube channel as well, right?
There is the YouTube channel, but you can't reach somebody through a YouTube. You can't reach out to a host on YouTube. I have no way of contacting anyone on YouTube. But yeah, we have that. We also have Bernie or Bust Television. That I want to highly recommend because Ellen Howe is doing just a great job deconstructing Elizabeth Warren and criticizing Obama's remarks about you got to get over this woke business real quick and all the rest that's going on. So I strongly recommend subscribing to that as well. Thanks, Steve, for having me. I appreciate this opportunity.
All right, Victor, thank you very much. And guys, stick around because I've got some stuff that I would like to go over, whereas Victor has chores. All right, let's go ahead and switch to here. And Victor, Tiffany, everyone. Guys, you feel free to throw questions into the chat. I can pay a little bit more attention to that now. I want to pull up not that New York Times article, but it will get me there. This piece that Caitlin Johnstone has been raising almost all of the information on regarding the OPCW. Let's get into this because this is pretty fucking groundbreaking stuff, and the lack of commentary on it is incredibly disturbing. This is out of Counterpunch. This is Jonathan Steele writing. Claims that Bashar al-Assad's forces have used chemical weapons are almost as old as the Syrian civil war itself. They have produced strong reactions, and none more so than in the case of the alleged attack in April last year on the opposition-controlled area of Douma near Damascus, in which 43 people are said to have been killed by chlorine gas. The United States, Britain, and France responded by launching airstrikes on targets in the Syrian capital. Were the strikes justified? No. As an inspector from the 8-member team was sent to Douma has just come forward with disturbing allegations about the international watchdog, the Organization for Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, OPCW, which was tasked with obtaining and examining evidence. In collecting samples, as well as drafting the OPCW's interim report, he claims his evidence was suppressed and a new report was written by senior managers with assertions that contradicted his findings. This is on top of the leaked OPCW reports that came out earlier this year that disclosed that no, in fact, we really didn't think these were chlorine bombs that went off. There's now 2, and 2 out of the 8 members of the OPCW team have come forward. The inspector went public with his allegations at an all-day briefing in Brussels, and he's telling this to Richard Falk, UN Special Rapporteur on Palestine, an ex-Special Forces general. The whistleblower, sorry. He's the second member of the Douma fact-finding mission to have alleged that scientific evidence was suppressed. Again, in May of this year, an unpublished report by Ian Henderson, a South African ballistic expert who was in charge of the mission's engineering subteam, was leaked. This is what I talked about earlier, and I've discussed this on the show before. The team examined 2 suspicious cylinders, which rebels said were filled with chlorine gas. One cylinder was found on the roof of a damaged building, where over 24 bodies were photographed. The other lay on a bed on the upper floor of a nearby house below a hole in the roof. Inspectors were able to check the scene because Syrian troops drove rebel fighters out of the area a few days after the attacks. Henderson did not go as far as to suggest that the opposition activists on the ground had staged the incident, but this inference could be drawn. Henderson's findings are not mentioned in the OPCW report. The staging scenario, and this is what we've talked about, this is what Caitlin Johnson has talked about, Jimmy Dore has even done some shows on this, where we... like, false flag doesn't even cover it. The staging scenario has long been promoted by the Syrian government and its Russian protectors, though without producing evidence. By contrast, Henderson and the new whistleblower appear to be completely non-political scientists who worked for OPCW for many years and would not have been sent to Douma if they had strong political views. They feel dismayed that professional conclusions have been set aside to favor the agenda of certain states. And that is pretty much a all-encompassing statement to how media works, to how elections are rigged, to the very information that most of independent media tries to share with you, because most of independent media doesn't share sources from other independent media. Going through the chat here real quick. Way martyr. Historically, fascist governments do not change from within. We are not going to vote or have them legislate our way out of an already existing fascist machine. I agree with that 100%. If you've watched the show for any amount of time at all, you should be hip to that, or my opinion on that. There's no fucking way that we can vote ourselves out of an oligarchy. There's no way that we can legislate our way out of an oligarchy. We've got, and I want to speak specifically to the interview that just happened on the show. I don't necessarily disagree that President Bernie Sanders would put forth a couple of band-aids on the gaping wounds that we as a society ruled by national security demons have been living in for these last, realistically, since Kennedy was murdered. I was watching Consortium News live last night for their season finale, which I recommend you guys go and check out some of after the show here today. Lee Stranahan was on, and he was saying the exact same shit. I'm like, felt all right knowing that someone with a platform like Lee is telling his audience similar information. He went pretty deep into the Kennedy assassination, but did pinpoint that as the moment where we started to live under control of these intelligence agencies. And it really ramped up and really just entrenched itself when George H.W. Bush walked from the director of the CIA's office where he had worked into the vice presidency, which we all know realistically was the presidency. If there's been a more obvious puppet than Reagan, I would be surprised. Frederick Murphy. We know he got screwed in 2016. He knows he got screwed in 2016. Nothing was done about it. History repeats itself. That is one of the reasons I really wanted to have Victor on today, is because I wanted to know what the organizational strategy for Bust was. And I understand to a degree holding off on that, but if you don't have that infrastructure in place, if you don't have your activists on the ground reaching out to people and letting them know, look, we need to stop this parade bullshit and we need to have a real goddamn protest because, look, they did it again. We told you they were going to do it again. You can't be surprised that they did it again because you had all the fucking information available. Let's go do some shit. And of course, Kevin, I don't mean violent shit. Jilly Love, listen to the last JFK speeches about advocating Medicare for all and eradicating the CIA in 1962. Sounds like Bernie. Okay, kind of. Bernie has never said anything about eradicating the CIA. Not once, not ever. The fact that JFK was advocating Medicare for all in 1962, and here we are in 2019, nearly 60 years removed from that, shows just how, I don't know, fucking compromising Bernie Sanders is in the first place. Like, and I mean this sincerely, Bernie would have been a great president in 1992. Coming out of the Cold War, that's when we could have, transitioned or slowly started to transition our economy, when we could have made real moves towards criminal justice when we could have set up a codified net neutrality with the birth of the internet, when we could have kept monopolistic organizations that are funded with CIA dollars like Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and all that shit. But here we are going into 2020, and the things that Bernie Sanders is advocating are just barely going to catch us up with where the rest of the world was in the fucking 70s. And Victor's right in that we don't have time in terms of climate to go through this reform process. Or he didn't say the reform, he was advocating the reform process. I'm saying we don't have time to go through the reform process because the reform process is, I don't want to say impossible, but highly improbable. Given that, back to this point, Bernie has never addressed the permanent national security state in this country. And again, calling out the military-industrial complex is good and fine and necessary, which is why Dwight Eisenhower did it in 1958. Yes, we need to be aware that the military-industrial complex has incredibly undue influence in every decision that's made at the federal and, in large terms, state levels. The military-industrial complex has undue influence in our media. It has undue influence in our film and television industry. Fucking dog. And I'm glad that he's calling it out. I am. But fuck, is it not enough? No, the CIA is not a part of the military-industrial complex. No, it is not. The military-industrial complex, according to the CIA, is a client of theirs. One of their clients. Just like the federal government is a client of the CIA. If I thought that Bernie was concerned about the national security state, the permanent unelected cabal of intelligence professionals whose goal it is to present disinformation as fact. If I thought that he was concerned about that, then I know I would have heard him say Julian Assange's name out loud. I know I would have heard him address Chelsea Manning over and over and over and over again. And what I have heard is the only time he'll say the word whistleblower, it applies to the Ukraine whistleblower who doesn't meet any of the fucking basic requirements of being a whistleblower. If you work for the CIA and the organization that you're blowing the whistle on is not the CIA, you are not a whistleblower. You are an employee following orders. Bernie was my compromise candidate in 2016. That was as far right as I was willing to go. I don't have that, I ended up not having that problem in the general election because they rigged it from him. I think that a lot of people are going to have the same realization coming into 2020 that what Bernie is advocating is a full and complete reform of the Democratic Party that operates in a purely capitalist society ran by a national security state, and the odds of reform happening are vastly higher than the odds of people taking to the street and surrounding the halls of power and demanding some fucking agency. Bernie has said he will not use the Espionage Act on whistleblowers or journalists. That is false. He did not mention journalists at all in that. And again, the only whistleblower he mentioned was the guy who's connected to Ukraine, who, again, is not a whistleblower. The inference that people who are like hardcore burners want to draw from that is that it would apply to journalists, but he had the opportunity to make that distinction and did not. And then when an actual whistleblower was raised to him in an interview in the form of Reality Winner, he immediately said, I don't know who that is. I'm not familiar with the situation. I'm not gonna say a word about it. So yeah. Will I interview Dak on my show? Dak can come on this show. Dak knows how to get a hold of me. Dak has been on Action for Assange a couple of times. I don't know. I've only talked to him in context of what he's done in terms of putting a camera in politicians' faces and asking, do you support Julian Assange? I don't really know much else about the guy. Like, I really don't. But yeah, he can come on. The simplest definition of fascism is a two-party system that's completely corrupted by the same force. Then there's all the simultaneous multiple wars, surveillance, and rigged elections. Fascism in its purest sense is a merger of corporations and the state. And it's a corporate rule through state agencies. That was Mussolini's definition. He even said fascism should more accurately be called corporatism. That's what we have. That's what we have since the murder of John F. Kennedy, if not before. Slowing that down, which I think Bernie Sanders might be able to pull off in some way, shape, or form, is certainly a good idea. It is. It is 100% too fucking late. I get that you gotta try, but I really wish that the try wasn't taking the form of someone who had the opportunity to stand up for his supporters after they had been robbed and rolled the fuck over. Unfortunately for some, it's his turn, he's most qualified, and we all need to fall in line. Irony and accountability is lost on them. I've been saying that, Sarah Rose. Thank you for hanging out today. I believe you are a new subscriber to the show. I've been saying that for quite a while now. The fact that the exact same arguments that are being made for Bernie Sanders are the ones that were made about why we had to vote for Hillary Clinton in 2016 is a delicious irony to me. It is. Wow. yeah, Bernie is better than Trump. For fuck's sake, Tulsi must prove herself. Um, of course, Bernie Sanders is better than Donald Trump. As a human being, as evidented by the policies that he has put forth, there's certainly light years of difference in character between Bernie and Trump. I don't think that people are making that argument on the left. I think that you run for president for one of two reasons, and that is you know full well that you're going to be enacting someone else's agenda, but you want the position because you're deluded enough to think that you might be able to get some of your own agenda done, and the power attracts you. Or you run for president because you're trying to get murdered. And you desperately want some information to get out into the public sphere. And I don't think Bernie's running to get murdered. I don't. William Martyr. It would appear that in large part alternative media news hosts don't really want us to have an expedient revolution, albeit peaceful, because what would they have to talk about afterwards? You know, man, my hope in the action for Assange vigils, our collective hope in the action for Assange vigils, and to a degree my hope with this show is to become irrelevant. Because the things that I have advocated for have happened. What would I talk about? I would talk about music, but nobody would tune in for that. I'd probably get a lot more fucking fishing in. I'm good with that. I am. At least the Bernster called out the ongoing coup and genocide of the Aboriginal tribes of Bolivia. Fuck yes, and I don't like the Tulsi Gabbard, I need to collect more facts and I need to get some more information before I'm willing to call it a coup. I don't like that at all. And I know that there are all kinds of excuses being made for Tulsi in that regard, just like there are all kinds of excuses being made for Bernie when it comes to Julian Assange, or his imperialism, or the fact that he rolled over for the DNC. I can't say this enough, guys. The pathway to neoliberalism starts with picking a candidate for president in a Democratic primary and spending the next however many weeks, months, or years defending their shitty behavior and their shitty words and their shitty actions. In other words, I don't hear Bernie calling for 9/11 justice. Tulsi is, but she has it all wrong and is trying to pin it on Saudi Arabia. An absolute insult to anyone with intelligence. So, look, man, I'm glad that Tulsi is trying to get more information out about 9/11. But yeah, I mean, there's undeniably a Saudi connection, William, at least in terms of who a lot of the players were. But it is not as strong as the one that Israel has. Straight up. Nico House literally said he doesn't have to hear what Tulsi said about Bolivia. You can guess what she's going to say. That's funny. DNC murders people. R.I.P. Seth Rich. R.I.P. Seth Rich. Quinn, we can wrestle, buddy. I'll question Tulsi whenever I want to. There's a rise of Media Matters affiliated people pretending to be communists who promote Antifa-style street violence. I have seen some of that. Tulsi is gathering intelligence from people on the ground in Bolivia. What more do you need? Look, man, when the military intervenes and ousts a sitting democratically elected president, and that military is acting in the best interests of both OAS and the United States intelligence community, that's a coup. You can hash out the details as they come in, but it's a coup. It doesn't even take like a strong character to say that. It doesn't take a lot of backbone to say that. You could literally have folded in front of your supporters and the entire televised audience of the Democratic National Convention after being robbed and advocate for the person who robbed you and still have the constitutional wherewithal to recognize that this is a coup. OAS is the Organization of American States. It was founded, I want to say, in the late 40s by members of the American intelligence community and some Congress critters. It's the coalition of the Central and South American countries that we have under our belt. I support Tulsi's message and her campaign, but I don't endorse her actions. I just want average people to hear Tulsi and hear her talk about anti-nuclear. Yeah, I agree. I do. Jonathan Melton, I have people from South America on my newsfeed telling me it's a legit coup. I'm divided. Look, again, man, when the military picks up its arms and uses them to depose a democratically elected leader of their country, that's a coup. Like, the underlying circumstances, the path to how we got there, all of that can be discussed, debated. You can learn new information every day about it, but in the strictest definition of the word, it's a coup. The same way that the Ukraine whistleblower doesn't meet any of the qualifications of being an actual whistleblower in terms of a coup, this is textbook, literal textbook of what a coup is. Tulsi hooked my mom and brother. Yeah, no, I mean that's good. I'm not. Look, man, I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't listen to a word of anything that these people have to say, and I'm always happy, regardless of the source, that people are continuing along a path of awareness and of, I hope, collective ascension. I do. That's not without its merit. What bugs me is when people get stuck and they think that as far as they are now is as far as they'll ever need to go or ever need to be. And that's one of my bigger overall issues with Bernard Jesus Sanders is that the idea that Bernie, his presidency, the platforms that he's put out, that's enough. That's what is going to fix us. And I think that in terms of a president's ability to put the left to sleep, I think Bernie would surpass what Obama did unmeasurably. Yeah, and it's a little bit past noon, so that's the show for me today. I want to thank everyone for hanging out. I love you guys. I'd like to thank my guest, Victor Tiffany. I don't know who I'm going to have on next week for the show, but I'll let you guys know as soon as I do. December 10th is when YouTube can arbitrarily turn off channels. I don't know if mine will survive that or not. We shall see. I don't think it will. I'm looking into other platforms. I really am. I've got to have a serious conversation about Rockfin. I do have a Patreon. I've been ignoring it, and I'm sorry. I'm going to get back to that. My Patreon is at patreon.com/slownewsday. If you're not and you're active on Twitter, follow me on Twitter at Slow News Day Show. Hit the like button, hit the share button, tell your friends about this shit. If we're going down, I want to go fucking, if this channel is getting eliminated, I want to be able to bring all of you bastards with me wherever I go. So in the meantime, I'm Steve Poikinen. This has been Slow News Day, and good luck to us all.